Hey everyone, this is Mr. Moeller for lesson 12-3, using slopes and intercepts. Our essential question for today is how can you use intercepts to graph? Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about the x and y intercepts in the past couple of days, and now we're going to put it together and use it to graph. And this kind of goes back to what we did a couple of chapters ago. It's not going to really seem like graphing, it's going to seem more like algebra, but it kind of has that connection then. So you have some vocab words on there. So you have x-intercept. Should already be on your paper. So x-intercept is the x-intercept is a line of the point where it crosses the x-axis. And that hint is really important. Plug in 0 for the y in the equation to find the x-intercept. Normally, if we have a graph, this line that I will make red is our x line. Anytime I have a graph, like this blue line, and it touches that point, that line where the blue line and the red line cross is the x-intercept. It's a hint to plug in 0 for the y to do that. Okay? And then very similarly, the y-intercept, so then the opposite. So the y line. So that point would be our black line here. So now where the blue line and the black line touch is going to be our y-intercept. And then kind of the opposite then, we're going to plug in 0 for our x to figure out what the y-intercept is. So, and then it says slope-intercept form of a linear equation. So slope m and the y-intercept b, then the line is described as y equals mx plus b. Okay, so if we go and look at our first one, we have x plus y equals 12. So basically, like it says, we're going to plug in 0 for our y to figure out our x-intercept. So I have x plus 0 equals 12. I could subtract 0 from both sides, but that's not going to do anything. So pretty self-explanatory. X is going to equal 12. 12 plus 0 equals 12. Okay? And then kind of the same thing for the second one. If I plug in 0 for my x, 0 plus y equals 12. Well, same thing. I could subtract 0 from both sides, but 12 minus 0 is still going to be 12. So our y-intercept is also 12. So now if I were to graph this, I would put a dot where x is 12, and then I would put a dot where y is 12, and then I would connect those two lines. And let's do one that actually has numbers on it. Okay? Here we go. 4x plus 3y equals 12. Alright, so same thing. I have 4x plus 3, except I'm not going to put in a y there. I'm going to put in a 0 for my y equals 12. 4x plus 3 times 0 equals 12. And we got a little bit of math to do. So same thing, 4x plus 3 times 0 is 0 equals 12. Well, same thing, I don't have to add 0, subtract 0, that doesn't do anything. So the 0 just kind of goes away. So I'm left with 4x equals 12. And then our last step, like most of the time, is to divide. Divide by 4, divide by 4. We figure out x is 3. And now to find the y-intercept then, kind of the opposite then. So instead of 4 times x, we're going to do 4 times 0 plus 3y equals 12. So you need a 0 then for that x. Same thing, 4 times 0 is 0 plus 3y equals 12. Again, I can subtract 0 from both sides, but that's not going to do anything. So I'm just left with 3y equals 12. And like the last problem, our last step is to divide. So let's divide both sides by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. The other way that I like to explain it, which you can't see because you can't see my screen right now, is I like to just say I like to cover one up. Because I know if I multiply anything by 0, it pretty much goes away. So if I'm just looking at 4x plus 3y equals 12, make a box here and cover it up. So if I make a box, and I cover up my 4x, well now I'm just looking at 3y equals 12. Well, if 3y equals 12, 3 times 4 is 12. I can figure that out. Same thing if I'm trying to find what x is, well then I'm just going to cover up the y. So I'm left with 4x equals 12. 12 divided by 4 is 3. That works for all these problems here. Same thing. This one, so y would equal 12. There's nothing to divide by, so we don't have to worry about that. Same thing here. X would equal 12. Nothing to divide by, so we don't have to worry about that. Alright, next one wants us to actually graph it now. So now that it tells us, hey, these are your intercepts, now I want you to graph it. Okay? So if my x-intercept is -2, remember this green line here is my x-line, Christmas colors, so my red line is my y-intercept. So if my x-intercept is -2, I'm going to put a dot there at -2. My y-intercept is also -2. There's my y-intercept right there. And I would just connect those two dots, so my graph would look like that. Okay, same thing. Let's do black and red. Okay, so my y-intercept is 2. So on my blue line, I'm going to go up 2. My x-intercept is 4. On my red line, I'm going to go 4 to the right. My lines. There's my graph. Okay, so remember, this is my x line. This is my y line. This is my negative x's. These are my positive x's. These are my positive y's. And these are my negative y's. So we're just graphing those two dots there. And then the last two, kind of a combination of what we just did. So same thing, we are trying to figure out then what our x and y intercept is, and then graph it. So same thing, we're going to make a box, and cover it up. So same thing, if I get y equals 5, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. Y equals 5, so our y-intercept is 5. I covered up the x, I put it in for 0, and then I do it this way. X equals 5, our x-intercept is also 5. So my x-intercept is 5, my y-intercept is 5, and we make a line to connect the dots. Okay, and the last one actually has some numbers with it. So 3x plus 5y equals a -15. Go back up and take this box. Okay, so same thing. If I'm trying to find the x-intercept, I'm going to cover up that y. So that y goes away. 3x equals a -15. And we're going to divide both sides by 3. Divide both sides by 3. X equals -5. So my x-intercept is a -5. So circle there. And we're going to try to find the y-intercept. So I'm going to cover up the x. So then I'm left with 5y equals -15. Divide both sides by 5. Divide both sides by 5. Y is -3. So my y-intercept is -3. And I end up with a dot there. Connect my dots. And we are good to go.